I'm Kristin Peck, CEO of Zoetis, and I'm joined today by Dr. Willie Reed, the Dean of Veterinary Medicine at Purdue University and a longtime Zoetis board member. Like so many, I've been outraged by the systemic racism and violence that has intensified in the US over the last few months. As importantly, it's also raising awareness to how far we have to come as a society before we have the equality and inclusiveness that we all are searching for. So as we as a company play a role to begin our own journey in making a change, in creating better equality, better inclusion across not just the United States, but the world, it starts with a better understanding. It starts with better empathy and understanding of the issues that we're facing. So to begin that discussion, I'm glad today to have Dr. Willie Reed joining us to share his perspectives. I've known Dr. Reed since 2014 when he joined the board, and he's always been an incredibly bright veterinarian, academic, and leader in the animal health industry. So today, what I'd love to start with Dr. Reed is, can you share a little bit about what you think drove your success as a Black man in the veterinary industry and some of the challenges that you had to overcome to achieve that?
Well, thank you, Kristin. I'm very, very pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you today. You know, as I reflect back on my career and my life, I think the experiences that shaped my success actually started a long time ago. It started as I was growing up as a small child in southern Alabama, very small town. It was during a time of desegregation of schools, a time of great challenges, a time of conflict in our country. I can recall being a small kid, a first grader, 6 years old, about to go to school, and I was slated to desegregate the local elementary school. I didn't have an appreciation of race. I didn't have an appreciation of differences in people. I didn't have an appreciation that someone could dislike you because of the color of your skin. And I remember going to school that first year and being a happy little first grader, and 3 days later, it stopped. It came to an end. Parents were protesting because they didn't want me as a Black child in their school with their kids. So needless to say, that was very traumatic for me. But it did stop my parents and my grandparents from doing all they could to make sure that I got a great education. And in fact, the next year, that first year, as a first grader, my grandmother taught me first grade on the front porch of our home. And I just recall the enthusiasm she had in teaching me, how she inspired me, how she had me feeling that I could do anything, I could become anything that I wanted. And so that first full year of my life, that's how I went to school. And then for the next 7 or 8 years, I had to move away, about 70, 80 miles away to another county to attend predominantly, an all-Black school. And my grandmother would travel with me every Sunday, and we would spend the next 5 days in this other town to allow me to pursue my education. And I did that for 8 years until I could move back to my hometown and then finish out high school. So I think during this time, I learned to never take your education for granted. That it is something special. And I learned that it was important that one work as hard as one could to become the best that you could ever become. So I grew up at a time and a place where dreams for many were just dreams. I had a dream too, and I'm fortunate that my dream came true, but that wasn't That wasn't true for a lot of people, a lot of my classmates, a lot of my friends. And so I had this dream of becoming a veterinarian. And people would tell me, well, we've never seen a Black veterinarian. Why do you think you can do it? We only had one veterinarian in the whole county that I grew up in, and I only saw him twice. So obviously I had no veterinary experience. Luckily, I had animal experience because of the nature of where we lived, and we were surrounded by animals. But so there was a lot of discouragement by friends, not too many family members who said, you can't do it, or if you did it, you still will be denied opportunity. But I pursued, I decided I wanted to try. And so at that time, there was only, I don't know, 17 or 18 veterinary schools in the whole country. There were two in Alabama, Tuskegee University, and then in the State University at a vet school, long-standing vet school, but they had never produced a single Black veterinarian in over 100 years. So I applied to Tuskegee, and I was accepted there, and found it to be a wonderful place that provided me with great support and encouragement, very encouraging environment. But most importantly, they were wonderful role models. I saw my first Black veterinarians at Tuskegee. In the city of Tuskegee, Alabama, I saw the first Black physicians, lawyers, and so on. So these were incredible role models that inspired many of us to achieve and become the very best that we could be. So in vet school, I deviated from my original dream. The original dream was that I was going to get my veterinary degree, return to my little hometown, and become the second veterinarian in the county. And I was going to treat all creatures, great and small. But that dream was changed. It was the second year of veterinary school that I took the course called pathology, which is the study of diseases, the causes of diseases, and how the body responds to injury. And I was fascinated with pathology. And so I sought out summer experiences to find out whether or not I really wanted to do this. And so I spent a summer doing vet school, actually working in a medical school at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, where I studied comparative pathology one summer. And then the next summer, I had another opportunity, an internship, to study pathology in a pharmaceutical setting, to really focus on drug development. And that was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, a company by the name of Upjohn that later became Pharmacia, that later became Pfizer, that later became Zoetis. So little did I know back years ago when I was working there in the building downtown in Kalamazoo that someday I would be affiliated with a company like Zoetis that now owns that facility. So there I met a role model, African-American role model pathologist who was also a Tuskegee University graduate. And he encouraged me and led me to Purdue, where I did my graduate work. And so I decided I wanted to work in academia, and I did and pursued that. And as a diagnostic pathologist and a researcher, I focused on infectious diseases, and also had an opportunity to do lots of research, to teach veterinary students and to train the next generation of pathologists. And so working in a veterinary diagnostic laboratory, a lot of interaction with livestock clients, poultry clients, veterinarians, and people from many walks of life. And at the same time, I had opportunities to work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control, and many other professional organizations. And then later on, I became very involved with administration and to have the role of training the next generation of veterinarians. So certainly there were challenges along the way. The first challenge, obviously, was getting into veterinary school when the odds were really stacked against me because few vet schools, the idea of being admitted to a veterinary school that wasn't in the state of Alabama was not even something that I conceived in those days. And I didn't have the veterinary experience that many of the veterinary schools required. And then, of course, I didn't have any mentors, no one to really inspire me. So that was a challenge. And then being to want to be a part of a profession, veterinary medicine, that was not viewed as being very welcoming, that was certainly viewed as a challenge. And as you may know, the profession, even today, still has the dubious distinction of being the least diverse of all the healthcare professions. And so along the way, other challenges include, after all this training, all the degrees, the board certifications, still to have clients and sometimes colleagues not accept you as any kind of an authority in the field. So that was always a challenge. They would, doubt your opinions and, doubt your recommendations. And so, as an African American, you have to really almost accept the fact that you don't have the presumption of competence. No matter how many years of experience, sometimes, no matter the degrees that you have or the institutions that you attended, there's the expectation or the need to constantly have to demonstrate that you have what it takes to do the job. So those are some of the challenges that I faced, Kristin. And I'm looking back, still, that's nothing I don't think I would change. I've had a wonderful career. I've met some wonderful people, and I tell my students all the time that along this journey of pursuing that dream, a dream comes true if you work hard and you are committed, and that you should always know, you should know that you're going to meet some wonderful people that are going to help you achieve that dream, because no person can do it by themselves. But dreams come true when there's commitment, hard work, and preparation.
Well, I know that you, Dr. Reed, have helped a number of people also make their dreams come true. It is a dubious distinction for the veterinary profession, as you mentioned, to be one of the least diverse. I also was on a call with you and some others on the issue of diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession, where I think it was mentioned that 75%, if I had this number correctly, of the vets in the United States went to Tuskegee, which sounds wonderful and atrocious. It says wonderful things about Tuskegee and what it has accomplished, but it says awful things about the industry. But I know you personally have been working hard throughout your career to drive greater diversity and inclusion, and at all levels, including in the elementary school level. I wonder if you might share a few of the ways you think we are making progress, and then put out some of the greatest challenges. I've heard you mention a few of these before, in what we really need to do to change in the veterinary profession to have a more equitable space and offer more opportunities for Black students.
Well, you're correct, Kristin, that Tuskegee University has produced about 70% of the nation's African American veterinarians. While overall diversity has certainly improved in veterinary medicine, a decade and a half ago, we only had about 10 to 12% underrepresented students studying in veterinary medicine. Today, that number is around 20%. So we have made strides, but unfortunately, we have not made significant strides in attracting African Americans to the veterinary profession. I was just looking at some data a few days ago. The class of 2023, which is the class that we admitted about a year ago, in that class of nearly 3,600 students entering the 30 vet schools in the U.S., there were only 119 African Americans. And even worse, of that 119 African Americans, only 19 were male. So think about that. In a country of nearly 330 million people, we had only 19 African American males to pursue veterinary medicine in the year 2019. So we have a lot of work to do. And so here at Purdue, we have worked hard to address the pipeline, um, developing programs at various age groups, elementary kids, middle school children, high school children, and even college kids, where we introduced them to the field of veterinary medicine. We showed them the many wonderful opportunities that are present for people who have the DVM degree. And and you have to approach the age groups differently. And children, developing playing cards and games, and we write books, and then we make sure that everything that we do, we have pictures of people that look like them, role models to inspire them. So I think this is a long journey, and this is a difficult journey, but we have to take the journey, and we have to be patient because we're not going to get there overnight.
So I've seen some of those great things when I was out there at Purdue a few years ago. The trading cards are one of my favorite ones of diverse vets that my daughter I know loves seeing. I do think the role model part is really important. But one thing I'd be curious of your opinion on is what you think the role is for corporations such as Zoetis. You've done a tremendous job in the academic setting of really trying to build a pipeline of future vets. But as you think about the role of Zoetis and the role of industry and corporations in America to try to, at least for this discussion, maybe in the veterinary profession, inclusive not just of vets, but of techs and other roles in the veterinary profession, what do you think we should be doing? And as a board member of Zoetis, do you think we're on the right path, or what other additional things should we be focusing on?
Well, I think corporations, companies, other entities first have to commit to equal opportunity, to really have those hard discussions about the state of affairs, and realize that none of us are doing enough to change the direction that we have been heading in. We have to demand, that when we have opportunities and we recruit individuals, that we have diverse pools of candidates. We have to do that. And then if we are really serious, we're going to have to, all of us, commit more time and resources to various pipeline programs to attract underrepresented minorities. And when we do this, we need to develop internships. We need to have leadership programs, leadership academies, mentoring opportunities. And I'm very proud that what Zoetis is doing, and the fact that Zoetis sees diversity and inclusion as a driver of business success. Some of the initiatives that I know that you are considering and have already started will certainly create a more diverse and sustainable pipeline of top talent. And so I applaud you for what you're doing. And I think the strategy, the DE&I strategy that the company has developed is excellent. It's built on the fact that we need strategic goals and culture, where we're going to focus on our colleagues, career development, and then engagement with the community. I think those are just outstanding strategic goals that the company is embarking on.
So finally, on a more personal level, you spoke a lot about the importance of role models for you, and sometimes the lack of role models, but the importance that seeing people and hearing from people who look like you can have. I wonder if you might be able to share some guidance, some counsel to colleagues at Zoetis or in the industry who are struggling with bias based on their racial background, or for those people who really want to create a more open and inclusive environment at Zoetis and across the industry?
Yeah, well, I think individuals who want to create a more inclusive environment, they have to be willing to engage in conversation and really be willing to discuss some of the difficult questions that people are not comfortable many times discussing race. So I think we want to stress to our colleagues that in order to make gains, we're going to have to get used to being uncomfortable, because that's what it's going to take is some real heart-to-heart discussions and a commitment from everyone that we don't like the way things are and that together we can make changes. And for individuals who feel that they are the targets of biasness, that they aren't being accepted, I think the way I have always looked at this is that I have been persistent in trying to pursue my goals. And then I think you have to seek out mentors, and you have to engage with the colleagues that you're with, because establishing personal relationships with everybody, I think, is so important when it comes to diversity and inclusion, because these personal relationships allows for cross-cultural understandings. We can't understand each other unless we get to know each other. So I think that's very important. And then I see people many times, they don't willingly embrace certain assignments that they are given. And it may not be that plum assignment that you want, but everything that you do, you can learn from it. I used to tell my graduate students all the time is that you may not like exactly the question that I want you to answer, but the tools that you are going to use to answer that question are tools that you're going to use forever. These are the tools that you're going to use to answer those big questions that you will come up with your own research project someday. And then finally, I think individuals have to really do an assessment of where they are. If they're working for an organization or a company that doesn't value them, doesn't value diversity and inclusion, I wouldn't waste my energy with them. I would move on, because one person cannot change the culture in an entire organization. And so sometimes you have to make that decision that this is not the place for me or for the advancement of my career.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Reed, today. I mean, I think this is just the beginning. And I think, as you said, well, we have to get comfortable with some discomfort and having those open and honest discussions. And I think for many of our colleagues to be able to hear your journey is inspiring. And I hope it also helps build greater awareness and empathy through better understanding different people's journeys. So thank you so much for that. And I also am incredibly grateful for your leadership in our industry. You've been such a powerful voice and certainly as an advisor to me through all this. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and our colleagues for listening in as well.
You're welcome, Kristin. I very much enjoyed it.